The story begins in the early 1940s, during one of the darkest periods in human history, the Holocaust. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and neurologist, was among millions of Jews deported to Nazi concentration camps. He was forced to leave behind his life's work, his family, and his freedom. Stripped of all possessions and even his identity, he became a number among thousands, a mere cog in the machinery of death. The camps were terrifyingly efficient in their cruelty. Prisoners were crammed into cattle cars, transported for days without food or water. When they arrived, they were herded into lines and judged. A mere motion of a guard's hand determined life or death, whether they would be sent to the labor camps or the gas chambers. Families were torn apart, and no goodbyes were allowed. Frankl found himself on the side destined for hard labor. Inside the camps, survival was a daily struggle. Prisoners were given thin, ill-fitting uniforms and wooden clogs that offered little protection against the freezing cold. Meals consisted of a thin bowl of soup and a small piece of bread, often too stale to chew. Days were spent performing backbreaking labor, often digging ditches or moving heavy stones, all under the constant threat of beatings or execution. Sleep came on hard, overcrowded wooden bunks with no blankets and the stench of unwashed bodies filling the air. Amidst this dehumanization, Frankl began to notice something profound. While the physical suffering was immense, it was the psychological torment that truly broke people. Many prisoners fell into despair, their spirits crushed by the enormity of their loss and the bleakness of their future. But some, remarkably, found ways to endure. Frankl observed that those who clung to a sense of purpose, however small, were more likely to survive. For Frankl, his purpose came in several forms. As a psychiatrist, he began to observe his fellow prisoners, studying their behavior as if they were part of an ongoing experiment. He noticed that even in the most brutal circumstances, human beings retained the freedom to choose their response. While many succumbed to bitterness or apathy, others held on to their humanity, showing kindness, sharing bread, or offering comforting words. Frankl himself clung to the hope of reuniting with his wife, imagining conversations with her in his mind. Even though he didn't know if she was alive, the thought of her gave him strength. There was a moment of clarity one icy morning while Frankl was forced to dig trenches. The sky above was painted with streaks of golden light, and for a brief moment, he felt transported beyond his physical suffering. He realized that life still held meaning, even in the camps. This meaning didn't come from external circumstances which were beyond his control. Instead, it came from within, from his ability to choose his attitude and find purpose, no matter how small. Frankl began to reflect deeply on the nature of human existence. He believed that the drive for meaning was the central force in a person's life. This stood in contrast to Freud's idea that human behavior was driven primarily by the pursuit of pleasure, or Adler's theory of the pursuit of power. Frankl's own experiences taught him that even in the absence of pleasure or power, people could endure if they found meaning in their suffering. He called this approach logotherapy, a form of psychotherapy focused on helping individuals find meaning in their lives. Frankl would later use the example of a grieving man who had lost his wife. Instead of trying to remove the pain of loss, Frankl encouraged the man to see his suffering as a reflection of his love. By reframing his pain, the man was able to find a sense of purpose even in his grief. Life in the camp was a constant test of this philosophy. Frankl saw how some prisoners maintained their dignity, even in the face of unbearable conditions. A man who shared his last piece of bread, or another who held onto his faith despite the horrors around him. These acts of humanity stood as evidence of the human capacity to rise above circumstances. At the same time, Frankl also witnessed the darker side of human nature. Some prisoners betrayed others for personal gain, while guards showed merciless cruelty. The camps revealed both the noblest and the basest aspects of human character. When liberation finally came, Frankl found himself grappling with a new kind of pain, the loss of his loved ones. His wife, his parents, and most of his friends had all perished. The weight of this loss was overwhelming. Yet, Frankl felt a deep sense of responsibility to share what he had learned. His survival, he believed, was not just a matter of chance, but a call to help others find meaning in their lives. Frankl's reflections led to his book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's part memoir, recounting his harrowing experiences in the camps, and part philosophical treatise, exploring the concept of meaning as the cornerstone of human existence. The book resonates with readers because it addresses universal truths. Everyone faces suffering at some point, whether through loss, illness, or hardship. Frankl's message is that suffering, while unavoidable, can be transformed into an opportunity for growth if approached with the right mindset. He used the metaphor of a man facing a great tragedy. Imagine someone who has lost his job, his health, or a loved one. At first, the pain seems unbearable, and the world feels empty. But through reflection, this person might find a new purpose, helping others in similar situations, for example, or dedicating himself to a cause. By finding meaning in his suffering, he can turn despair into hope. Frankl's insights are not just confined to extreme situations like concentration camps. They apply to everyday life. In a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, people can find meaning in their relationships, their work, or even their struggles. The key, Frankl argued, is to ask not what we expect from life, but what life expects from us. Every moment is a question, and how we answer it defines our humanity. Today, Frankl's story continues to inspire people around the world. His message is especially relevant in times of crisis, when the world feels heavy and the future uncertain. He reminds us that while we cannot always control our circumstances, we can control our response. We can choose to find meaning, even in the darkest moments. In the end, man's search for meaning is a story about hope. It's about the resilience of the human spirit and our ability to create meaning, no matter how grim the situation. Frankl's journey reminds us that suffering is not the end. It's a pathway to transformation, growth, and ultimately freedom. And in that freedom lies our greatest strength.